A 10-year-old boy interrupted a billion-dollar courtroom trial with just 6 quiet words and exposed a conspiracy so deep it shook the nation. But what no one knew was that he wasn't just there to speak. He was there to finish what his missing mother started. This isn't just a story of justice. It's a story of whispers turning into revolution. Dear friend, what you're about to experience is not just a story, it's a deeply human journey about lost resilience and the quiet, unexpected ways love finds us when we need it most. If this is your first time here, I invite you to drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. We love hearing your voice. And if you're someone who believes in second chances, in the hidden strength of ordinary people, and in stories that stay with you long after they end, consider subscribing and tapping the bell icon. We share moments that matter. Thank you for being part of this one. Now, let's begin. The courtroom was full that morning, not just with lawyers and reporters, but with the dense, suffocating kind of silence that only shows up when people expect something terrible to happen. A storm had rolled through Boston the night before, slicking the sidewalks and shrouding the skyline in a curtain of gray. Still, every seat inside Suffolk County Courthouse was taken. Everyone had come to watch the fall of Gavin Rhodes, the billionaire who once promised to save thousands of sick children and was now accused of stealing millions from their futures. At the far back of the room, tucked between 2 marble columns, sat a boy no one noticed. He was small, maybe 10. His jacket was too big, his shoes didn't match, and his backpack sat in his lap like he didn't trust the floor to hold it. His name was Noah Blake, and until that morning he had never spoken a word in public. Not at school, not at the store, not even to the kindly court officer who had smiled and waved him through the metal detector for the last 3 weeks without asking questions. But Noah had been watching. He had seen every day of the trial, every crooked glance from the defense, every twitch from the prosecution, every time Judge Marion Graves tapped her pen 3 times before sustaining an objection. He wrote things down in a soft green notebook with a fraying spine. He didn't doodle, he mapped phrases, movements, dates. He drew spirals when people lied, stars when someone told the truth. At 9:47 a.m., just as the prosecutor leaned in to deliver what was meant to be the final nail in Rhodes's coffin, Noah closed his notebook. He stood up slowly, carefully, as though his small body might betray him with a sound. He stepped out from his bench, walked 3 rows forward, and spoke. "You missed something." The prosecutor's voice stopped mid-sentence. Heads turned first in mild irritation, then in confusion, and finally in disbelief. A bailiff reached for his shoulder but paused when Noah raised one hand calmly, like he had all the time in the world. "I've been here," Noah said, his voice clear but quiet, "since the beginning, and you missed something." Judge Graves narrowed her eyes. "Young man, who are you?" with Noah, looked toward the gallery. His grandmother had fallen asleep beside the window, a paperback folded in her lap. Unaware her grandson was doing something no one had ever prepared him for. "I'm Noah Blake," he said softly, "and I think you're about to send the wrong man to prison." Gasps rippled through the room. The defense attorney, Thomas Harlan, turned pale. Gavin Rhodes, seated between 2 guards, looked up for the first time in hours. "I'm sorry," Noah added. "I know I'm not supposed to talk, but you have to look at page 6 again of the March 12th audit." The judge's gavel slammed down. "Enough. Who let this child into my courtroom?" Noah didn't flinch. Instead, he walked forward and carefully placed his notebook on the prosecutor's desk. "There's a pattern," he said, "in the transfer notes. The decimals were moved. It looks like embezzlement, but it's masking something else." No one moved. He opened the notebook. On one page, he'd drawn a series of boxes connected by arrows and circles. Next to them were dates and symbols. Some were musical notes, Others were shapes only a trained eye might recognize. On the bottom right corner, 3 initials had been scribbled in blue: MG. Judge Marion Graves stared at it for a long moment. Then she stood. Clear the court, she said, her voice low, and shaking in a way no one had ever heard before. Outside, the reporters erupted. Inside, chaos bloomed. But Noah didn't leave. He stood still, watching Graves with the same quiet focus he had shown for 21 days straight. When the room emptied and silence settled again, she finally asked, "How did you see that my mom taught me how to look at what people don't want you to see?" "Your mother." Noah nodded. "Evelyn Blake. She used to work for the Federal Auditing Bureau. She went missing 6 months ago." The air in the room tightened. Judge Graves stepped down from the bench, her heels clicking too sharply against the marble. She stopped 3 feet from the boy and stared into his face. "You shouldn't be here." "She left me the files," Noah whispered, "on a flash drive hidden inside one of her storybooks. I didn't understand it at first, but I do now." Graves looked away, and in that moment Noah saw at the smallest twitch of her jaw the rapid blink. Fear. She was onto something, he said. Wasn't she? The judge didn't answer. "I think she trusted the wrong person," Noah added, his voice dropping. "I think she trusted you." The silence that followed was deafening. Somewhere, deep in the city, sirens wailed like a distant warning. But inside that courtroom it was just a boy and a woman staring at each other, both holding truths too heavy for most to carry. For Noah, the moment wasn't about being brave. It wasn't about attention or making history. It was about a promise. 6 months ago, the night before his mother vanished, she had leaned down, kissed his forehead, and said, "If something ever happens, listen quietly. And then tell the truth, even if your voice shakes." Noah's voice had shaken, but he had told it anyway, and everything was about to change. Noah didn't go home after the courtroom was cleared. He sat in the small windowless interview room beside a detective who had just asked him if he wanted juice. He shook his head. The juice was warm. The walls buzzed faintly with fluorescent light. The detective, a young woman with sharp features softened by tired eyes, watched him with careful distance. "I'm Detective Mara Lynn," she said gently. "I'm not here to scare you. I'm here because what you did in that courtroom that took guts." Noah kept his hands folded in his lap. His backpack was on the table between them. One zipper was half broken, the other holding tight the secrets he still hadn't figured out how to explain. Mara slid a legal pad in front of him. "You said your mom left you a flash drive." He nodded, then slowly unzipped the front pocket. From inside, he pulled out a small gray USB scuffed along the side with a faded sticker of a moon and stars on one end. His mother had always used stickers to organize her things. "She told me stories at night," he said, barely louder than a breath. But sometimes the stories were code. She'd say, "If I can't be near my stars, we'll guide you." This was hidden in the back of a storybook, the one about the boy who built machines out of junk. Mara plugged it into her laptop, but the screen flickered oddly. A pop-up appeared, password protected. A blinking field, black background, white letters, enter key. Noah pulled out his green notebook and flipped to a page filled with jagged arrows, musical notes, and shapes. She hid it inside a lullaby, he whispered. "Excuse me?" Mara asked, raising an eyebrow. She used to hum a song to me when she thought I was asleep. I started writing it down in symbols based on pitch. Then I noticed it lined up with her filing system. He began to hum quietly. The sound was simple, slow, haunting. His fingers tapped the table in rhythm. G, E, D, A, B, B. He typed the sequence. The screen blinked. Unlocked. What appeared next made Mara go completely still. A folder named Martian Protocol. Inside were spreadsheets, bank logs, corporate contracts, surveillance images, documents stretching back 2 years. They detailed unusual hospital foundation grants, rerouted donations, overlapping account names with fake Social Security numbers. One name stood out, Marion Graves. "I don't think Gavin Rhodes did this," Noah said. "I think he found out too late, and someone made it look like he ran the whole thing." Mara was silent for a long time. Then she whispered, "Your mother was building a case. She told me to pay attention to silence. That's where secrets hide." Later that evening, Mara called in a digital forensic expert. Noah sat off to the side with a muffin someone had given him untouched. He didn't eat. He couldn't. His mind was full running loops of everything he'd seen and felt in the courtroom. The way the judge's voice cracked. The flash of recognition when he mentioned the audit. He remembered his mother's last words to him. They hadn't made sense at the time. "If I'm gone too long, follow the sound of crumbs." He had thought she meant snack crumbs. Now he wasn't so sure. Her clues always meant something layered. He reopened his notebook. On one page was a doodle of a bird cage slightly open. A trail of crumbs scattered from the door. Next to it, written in her handwriting, "Even locked things can leave trails." Suddenly, it made sense. He told Mara. She left a trail. They reloaded the flash drive, searching the metadata for access points. There were hidden files, password-protected layers beneath what they had first seen. The final layer unlocked with a riddle. "Where do broken wings fly?" Noah answered aloud without hesitation. "They fly where no one watches." The screen shifted again. This time, there was a video. Shaky, filmed from a cell phone hidden inside a purse or coat. The audio was muffled, but the faces were clear. Judge Marion Graves was sitting across from an unfamiliar man at a dinner table in a dark, upscale restaurant. "No one will trace it back," the man said. "They won't even look twice," Graves replied. "He's arrogant enough to think it's real. And when they catch him, we all get clean." The video timestamp was dated the night before Gavin Rhodes was arrested. Noah stared at the screen. His heart didn't race. He didn't freeze. It was something deeper. A certainty. A quiet weight settling into place. He whispered she was right. Outside the station, the sky had begun to snow again. Flakes fell in slow spirals, melting against the windshield of Mara's car as she drove Noah home to his grandmother's apartment. He sat in the passenger seat holding the green notebook like a compass. "You think she's still alive?" Mara looked over, expression guarded. "I don't know, but she was smart enough to get this far." Noah stared out the window. The snow looked like tiny pieces of something bigger, something that could only be understood if you stood still long enough to see the pattern. "She knew someone was coming for her," he said. Mara parked the car and turned to face him. "You did more than some adults would ever dare. You spoke when it counted. Your mom would be proud." Noah's voice was almost too soft to hear. "I didn't speak because I was brave. I spoke because I missed her too much to stay quiet." When Mara walked him up to the apartment, his grandmother met them at the door, eyes wide with confusion and relief. "You've been gone all day," she said, pulling Noah close. He didn't explain. He just reached into his backpack, pulled out the flash drive, and held it between them like a thread. "I think I'm following the crumbs now," he said. And he meant it, because for the first time since Evelyn disappeared, the world felt like it was whispering back. The library on Tremont Street didn't open until 9, but Noah was already sitting on the steps by 8:30, his backpack hugged close to his chest. Snow flurries swirled around him in soft confusion, sticking to the folds of his jacket and the curls that had escaped his knit cap. It was the kind of Boston morning that bit through layers and made the world feel smaller, tighter, quieter. But Noah didn't shiver. He was used to waiting in silence. When the door finally unlocked with a hollow clack, he was the first inside. The warmth hit him in waves, the smell of old paper and heating vents too ancient to be efficient. He made his way to the far back corner where the history and law sections met. A room few people used. A room for whispers and wonder. The quiet room. It had been his mother's favorite spot. Evelyn used to bring him here after school. She'd read court opinions out loud like they were bedtime stories, laughing at how dramatic some of the language sounded. Words shape laws, and laws shape lives, she'd whisper, tapping the book spine. So, always pay attention to the words they don't say. Now, Noah sat cross-legged in the same corner she used to curl up in her green notebook open beside him. He pulled out the flash drive again this time, plugging it into one of the dusty public computers. The librarian, a gentle man with gray at his temples, and a name tag that read, Mr. Keyes, offered him a polite nod from across the room, as if he already knew this child came here for something deeper than homework. The video files still haunted him. Judge Graves laughing behind a half-full wine glass. The way she said we all get clean like it meant nothing. He opened a folder labeled Drafts, Evelyn. Inside were partial letters, half-finished memos, scribbled reminders to herself. One caught his attention. To R. Lenton. Subject, The Unseen Path Draft. 3. The document wasn't finished, but her notes were raw and real. They're building the charges against Rhodes too fast. The numbers don't line up unless someone's pulling wires from inside. I've gone over the payment trails twice. Every time a new dead end appears, someone's erasing the connections in real time. I believe it's coming from within the judiciary. Graves isn't just connected, she's leading it. Noah leaned back in the chair. The quiet room felt too still, like the walls had swallowed her voice and kept it sealed in plaster. He scanned the files again. One was named CRS Archive. Primary. It opened with a list of names. Politicians, corporate donors, judges, foundations, and beneath each name, symbols, stars, spirals, red lines. Evelyn's way of tracking integrity. A red line meant danger. Every line under Graves's name was red, but it wasn't just her. Noah spotted another named Daniel Corver, head of the Children's Research Safety Board. Publicly hailed for partnering with Rhodes Tech for pediatric care expansion. In Evelyn's notes, one quote stood out. Corver says he wants cleaner futures, but he's hiding too many wires behind false walls. He once fired a whistleblower who found inconsistencies in trial data. Her name was Anna Merrill. She disappeared last spring. Noah wrote the name in his notebook. Merrill. He didn't know where to find her, but someone must have noticed when she vanished. Maybe someone else had seen the same cracks his mother did. The question wasn't just where his mother had gone, it was who else had been taken down with her. He left the quiet room around noon. Mr. Keyes handed him a paper bag as he passed, no words, just a nod. Inside was a peanut butter sandwich and a thermos of warm apple cider. Noah mumbled a thank you and tucked the bag into his pack. Outside, the wind whipped at his cheeks. He walked the 4 blocks to Mara Lynn's precinct and signed in with the front desk sergeant who now greeted him like a returning regular. Mara was waiting for him. She had barely slept. I ran the metadata on that video, she said as they walked toward her desk. It was recorded on a burner phone that hasn't been connected to any service provider in 2 years. That makes it difficult to verify, but not impossible. I sent a facial ID scan to match the man with Graves in the video. I think we're going to get something. Noah didn't interrupt. He waited. She glanced at him. But I need you to know something. This is starting to go above me. Once we name names like this, I'll have to escalate to federal authorities. That means exposure. People will start asking how we got this information, where it came from, and your name might come up. He looked down at the flash drive, then at her. I don't care. You should. No, he said simply, because someone took her voice. So I'll use mine until I find hers. Mara paused. Then she leaned down, looked him square in the eyes. Do you want to be a witness? Noah, that's not a small thing. It's not a story you walk away from. Noah reached into his bag, pulled out his mother's folded memo and placed it on the desk. I already am. Mara exhaled slowly, then picked up her phone. Later that evening, Noah went back to the quiet room. He sat there long after the library closed, Mr. Keyes pretending not to notice. He scribbled more notes, redrew the maps Evelyn had started. And for the first time in months, he didn't feel like a boy alone in a silent world. He felt like part of something bigger. Not just a son searching for his mother, but a voice building its own weight. The quiet room had once been Evelyn's sanctuary. Now it was Noah's war room, and he wasn't. The press conference happened on a Wednesday morning that smelled of metal and frost. Mara stood behind a podium outside the courthouse, her blazer too thin for the weather, but her voice clear and sharp. She never mentioned Noah by name. She never said the word flash drive. But when she spoke of new evidence of a corruption probe within the judicial ranks, the air around the city seemed to still. Noah watched it all from the safety of his grandmother's couch, the green notebook open in his lap. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the sense that the world had shifted on its axis, and he had been part of it. That same day, 3 judges were placed on administrative leave pending investigation, including Marion Graves. But the deeper Mara and her federal contacts dug, the more confusing it became. The conspiracy wasn't a single thread, it was a web knotted and stretched across departments, accounts, private contractors, and shell foundations. People who shouldn't have had anything in common appeared on the same financial ledgers. Evelyn had called it the Shadow Network, and it was far bigger than anyone had expected. Late that night, after the world had quieted again, Mara sat across from Noah in the quiet room. They had started meeting there sometimes where the lighting was soft and the walls didn't echo. Mara had a file in her hands, thick and heavy. "We found Anna Merrill," she said. Noah looked up sharply. "She's alive," Mara continued, "living under a new name in Providence. She agreed to speak under federal protection. She confirmed what your mom suspected Rhodes was framed. The trial data she flagged was being altered from the inside. But she didn't realize it went all the way up the chain." Noah stared at the table, thinking about the night his mother disappeared. About the rhythm of her footsteps, the way her voice had changed when she thought she was being followed. She had known even then that Anna wasn't the only one being hunted. "She left a note," he said. "The last one. Hidden under a floorboard. It said, 'If they chase light, become the dark.' I thought she meant hide." Mara nodded slowly. She meant blend in, operate where they don't expect you. The next step came through a single envelope, delivered by hand. No return address. Just Noah's name scrawled in neat, slanted cursive. Inside was a photograph. A grainy image of a warehouse near the docks, the kind with broken windows and rusted locks. On the back, check the basement. They store what they can't bury. Noah showed it to Mara, and for the first time she didn't try to talk him out of coming with her. They brought backup. Federal agents, 2 unmarked cars. The operation was quiet, surgical. What they found beneath that warehouse changed everything. Dozens of file boxes labeled with code names, patient records, clinical trial footage. Some of the documents bore Rhodes Tech letterheads, but they had been forged. Evelyn's handwriting lined the margins of many of them. Her notes were precise, clinical. She had cataloged the manipulation of data, the side effects omitted from reports, the ways corporate money had paved over medical warnings. This wasn't just white-collar crime. It was human cost. Families misled, children hurt, and the truth scrubbed clean. At the center of it all was one name repeatedly flagged: Daniel Corver. Mara swore under her breath. He didn't just cover for Graves, he funded the whole operation. They arrested him that night. Noah didn't sleep. He stayed up in the library copying every page of his mother's notes into the notebook, mapping the connections. He was tracing her thoughts backward, trying to see the point where everything unraveled for her, where she decided to stop reporting and start hiding. He realized something then. She hadn't disappeared. She had run. She had chosen not to trust anyone in power. Not then. Maybe not even Mara. She had buried her work in layers of encryption and riddles, not just to protect Noah, but because she knew the people she was trying to expose would stop at nothing. And somewhere she was still watching. The next morning, Noah received an email. No subject, no sender, just a single line. You finally followed the sound of crumbs. He stared at the screen for a long time, heart racing. He knew that line, knew the way she said it. It wasn't proof. It wasn't even clear if it was her. But it was something. A spark. He replied, "Where are you?" No answer came, but in that moment it didn't matter. Because Noah understood now his mother had lit a torch and passed it to him. The work she began, he had helped carry forward. The shadow network was crumbling under the weight of truth. And whether she ever returned or not, she had left behind a son who knew how to fight. Not with rage, not with noise, but with whispers, with quiet rooms, with green notebooks filled with code, with names no longer hidden, and with truth that refused to stay buried. It was late March when the wind began to change. Boston still carried winter in its bones, but the sidewalks no longer shimmered with frost. Pigeons returned to the rooftops. In the public square near City Hall, someone had planted tulip bulbs that now peeked through the thawed soil, tentative but alive. Noah stood in front of the courthouse steps once more, not as a witness, not as a boy hiding behind others' decisions, but as someone being seen. The trial had ended 2 days ago. Daniel Corver had been found guilty on 7 federal counts. Marion Graves had stepped down in disgrace, her assets frozen, her pension revoked. Rhodes had been exonerated publicly and in writing, and Noah had stood through it all, watching justice speak its strange, slow language. Now the world moved again, and he was still standing. Mara approached from behind a warm drink in hand. She passed it to him without a word. They didn't need to say anything anymore. They had learned to move in tandem, her with her instinct, and grit him with his quiet clarity. "You know," she finally said, "you could write this story. Not just your version. The whole thing. People need to understand how deep this went." Noah looked down at the green notebook pages now filled from edge to edge. It's not over yet. She didn't ask what he meant, because both of them knew. Some stories don't end. They evolve. Later that evening, Noah sat by the window in his grandmother's kitchen. The radio hummed softly, a Sinatra tune curling through the room like smoke. His grandmother chopped carrots on the counter, humming along occasionally, looking over with a smile that never asked too many questions. He turned a page in the notebook, then stopped. Inside, tucked between notes and scribbled arrows, was a new piece of paper. It hadn't been there before. It was folded neatly crisp. His name was written on the front in handwriting he knew too well. Inside was a single sentence. "You were never just a boy with questions. You are the answer someone will one day need." His hand trembled as he held it. It wasn't proof. But it didn't have to be. He pressed the note against his chest and closed his eyes. Somewhere, Evelyn was still watching. Maybe not nearby, maybe not safely, but alive in every act of courage he now understood. alive in the cracks of the system she fought to expose, alive in the way Mara stood taller, in how the quiet room now welcomed students who asked hard questions, and how people like Anna Merrill were no longer afraid to speak. A week later, Noah returned to the same library and stood before a newly mounted plaque above the quiet room's door. It read, "In honor of Evelyn March." A voice in the silence, a light in the dark. He placed a single tulip beneath it, then walked inside to start writing. Not code, not maps, but a new story. One not just of corruption or loss or justice, but of how a whisper when heard can change everything. And this time the wind felt warm. Noah March never planned to be a symbol. He wasn't the loudest in the room, the boldest on the page, or the first name anyone would expect to turn a system inside out. But perhaps that was the point. His story didn't begin with a microphone. It began with a whisper, a quiet courtroom breath few even heard, a single, simple truth spoken by a boy too young to carry the weight of a nation's broken promises. And yet somehow he did. From that moment, Noah's life became a thread in a much larger tapestry, woven with the bravery of his mother Evelyn, the sharp determination of Mara Bell, and the echoes of others who had been hurt, silenced, or disappeared in the name of power. What began as a hushed interruption in a courthouse unraveled into the exposure of a massive conspiracy, a shadow network stretching across corporate, medical, and judicial walls. But more than a political scandal or legal reckoning, this story is about how truth, no matter how buried, still remembers how to rise. Evelyn March's disappearance was never a defeat. It was a strategy, one that placed breadcrumbs in Noah's hands not in anger, not in vengeance, but in the hope that someone kind enough, careful enough, and brave enough would follow. And he did. Not with a team of investigators, not with an arsenal of power, but with memory instinct and the quiet brilliance only a child like him could wield. Noah didn't just uncover evidence. He uncovered himself, his courage, his grief, his resolve, and in doing so he brought others along with him. Mara found not only justice but redemption in her own past missteps. Anna Merrill found her voice. Rhodes reclaimed his future. And somewhere Evelyn, whether lost or waiting, knew that her son had not only survived but stood tall. What makes this story remarkable isn't that a boy uncovered corruption. It's that he did it while carrying trauma, doubt, and loneliness, and still chose kindness. He never once sought revenge, never wished to destroy, only to be heard, only to protect, only to answer the questions his mother had left behind. He proved that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. And those whispers, when believed, can shift mountains. So what do we take from Noah's story? What does it offer to each of us sitting in our own lives far from courtrooms and crime scenes? We learn that truth is never powerless. It may be silenced, mocked, delayed, but never erased. And that speaking up even in fear is better than living with silence that weighs more than words. We learn that even the smallest among us children, the unheard, the underestimated, can be the key to change. That trauma is not weakness. That grief, when honored, can transform into purpose. In a world where misinformation and manipulation can feel insurmountable, Noah reminds us that clarity, patience, and steady resolve are tools just as powerful as influence or money. That to rebuild trust in broken systems, we must first believe that rebuilding is even possible. And that justice is not a destination, it is a practice, a promise we make every day, when we choose to see, to question, and to care. So, if you've made it to the end of this story, thank you. Thank you for giving space to a whisper, for allowing a boy like Noah to matter, for remembering Evelyn, for respecting Mara, and for believing that truth deserves its day. And if this story stirred something in you, hope, sadness, strength, fire, then we invite you to stay with us. There are more stories like Noah's, Stories that the headlines miss. Stories that begin small but live large in the hearts of those who carry them. Subscribe to Emotional Stories, where every tale is crafted to move you, challenge you, and reconnect you to what really matters: kindness, courage, and the belief that good people still exist. And they still win. Your support helps us keep telling these stories, and somewhere another whisper is waiting to be heard. Thank you for listening. We'll see you in the next one.